Being the mayor of any larger city in today's era of discontent requires a unique commitment to finance, public safety, and social issues. So the question arises, could a large city mayor with a proven track record of balancing the budget, tackling homelessness, and supporting the police be the right person to represent Silicon Valley in Congress? My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. My guest is Sam Liccardo, the former mayor of San Jose, which most people would agree is California's most innovative large city. Sam, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
So you've got a great track record. You've managed the public finance of the city of San Jose. You managed the various people. You did a lot for homeless, as I understand. You built these quick build cities, I believe, or quick build housing.
Communities, yeah.
And you've been in support of the police, among other things. And the first question people give me when I say we may have Sam Liccardo on the show is, how does Sam's experience running San Jose going to translate to being effective in Congress?
We have right now the least productive Congress in half a century. If you look at the number of bills that are actually emerging, we know the reason for that. Obviously, it's deeply divisive and partisan right now. And people are frustrated that Congress isn't getting much done. As mayor, you don't have the luxury of pointing at the other party and saying we didn't get anything done because it's their fault. People expect accountability. If there's an encampment in their neighborhood, if there's a burglary next door, you have to respond. You may not respond well all the time, but at least they know you're responding. We need a Congress with that kind of accountability, and that's what I want to bring to Congress. Around the issues that we care most about, and I talk a lot to folks about, what are your top concerns? Things like homelessness, crime, and the high cost of living. I've spent dozens of hours on Capitol Hill, and you typically hear a response from too many members of Congress. Those are just local issues. Go talk to your police chief about crime. You got high housing costs. That's not our problem. Well, the reality is these are crises throughout the country. Homelessness, high cost of housing, for example, in every major metro in the country, except for a few, certainly on the coast. So these are national challenges, and they need a federal response.
And now you've spent years as a prosecutor before being in City Hall or city government. Do you have a particular focus or a particular perception of how to deal with the crime or the homelessness issue first?
With regard to crime, certainly we really haven't seen significant federal legislation engaged in supporting local law enforcement since the mid-1990s. And right now, a lot of small towns and big cities are struggling just to be able to fill their police departments. And having that kind of support again, like we had with the bill the Clinton administration was able to marshal through 100,000 cops funding, that kind of thing, that would be a welcome sight. But we know that costs a lot of money. I put out a book that would focus on much lower cost approaches to actually addressing crime in our communities and how federal government could play a better role. And I just talk about one idea, that is we need to really focus on breaking the connection between addiction and crime. And there's a lot of ways you can do that within the budget. Right now, federal inmates go from prison to the world without any kind of parole, supervised release. That was eliminated back in 1987. For nonviolent offenders, we know more than half of them have addiction issues. There's no reason why they should not be subjected to a very rigorous oversight with supervised release, frequent testing, and very modest sanctions with each violation. You could save money on the back end of the prison term, and you can do something about the addiction that is ultimately going to propel them to go commit more crime. It's those kinds of approaches where we can both save money and reduce the impact on the community that I'm really focused on.
So what you're suggesting, I think, is that the federal government could be the funding source for this kind of a program. Is that correct?
Well, the federal government's already funding its prisons, right? Mm-hmm. Those are federal prisons, of course. For a nonviolent offender, the idea of reinstituting parole where you essentially shorten the sentence by, say, 4 months and then have somebody in supervised release, that's a much less costly prospect than having them in custody. If we are very rigorous, using, for example, a program similar to what they had in Honolulu called Operation Hope, of very frequent testing and very certain and swift consequences for failure to test clean, That doesn't mean you put people back in prison for months or years. Even a single day in jail can be enough to deter behavior in a very significant way. And they saw great results in reducing recidivism, that is, folks committing more crime in Honolulu. It's those kinds of approaches that I think we need more of, and where we can hopefully draw some bipartisan consensus.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, we had Johnny Stebbins on. She's running for judge. 26 years as a prosecutor in Santa Clara County. You probably know her.
I did, yeah, so I used to work with her when I was a DA.
She made the point that the Prop 47 removed the internal Santa Clara funding for treatment, or enforced treatment, I should say, or required treatment, has been taken away. And so it used to be jail or treatment. Now it's treatment or go free, because jail has been removed.
I had a similar conversation with a judge about a year and a half ago who was very instrumental in creating the drug court. And the drug court was, innovative when it was created more than 20 years ago. And the idea was we knew nonviolent addicted offenders needed to get to treatment. Let's give them a path, give them a stick and a carrot, right? And let them make good choices. If you're never going to make an arrest, then you're never going to have that ability to essentially present the stark choice between the carrot and the stick. We do need to make arrests. And with regard to Prop 47, I know it's been criticized often in various ways. The studies suggest, it's not responsible for all the crime that people are concerned about. It's a small, but clearly theft did increase significantly, I think 9% according to a PPIC study after Prop 47. There's a lot more we could do around burglaries and theft if we had a federal local partnership that focused on those theft rings, that provided a lower threshold for felony arrests so that we could get those folks who are committing the crime into the system. Doesn't mean they're going to go do time, but it means they're at least in the system, so that way we can build cases to go after the larger theft rings. That's really critical. You have to have an arrest. You don't necessarily need to put people behind bars for a long time, particularly if you're talking about petty offense. But you got to have an arrest or there's no deterrent.
I think most people would agree with that, 100%. State of California has some laws. The legislature's passed some laws.
Yeah.
Part of that supermajority that has really hurt that effort. And, you do get in the way. I think your ideas are excellent. But it seems that the legislature has got some other directions they've taken that have really impeded that. I'm not up on all the laws, but that's my impression. I talked to a couple other people who ran for assembly 2 years ago, and they told me about this CARES Act, that you could have a family member make a request to take a person off the street, and that was never funded. Things like that happened. So,
well, the CARES Act is just coming online now, and it's online, I think, in the first 7 counties, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 9 in California. There's no question there's a funding challenge, and I think that's what Proposition 1 is about. But what's really critical about that, and I supported the CARES Act. I think it's important for us to be able to, for unhoused residents who are struggling mightily with mental health, we need to have inpatient treatment for some of them in some cases, and certainly more significant services. But we've had this legacy since the mid-1960s of a statute in the Medicaid statute that does not reimburse local communities for mental health and substance abuse treatment if it's delivered in a facility of more than 16 beds. So essentially the large treatment facilities, large mental health hospitals went away in many communities because there was no Medicaid reimbursement. Those are the kinds of constraints we need to take away so that the federal government can be a better partner with cities that are struggling with what we all see on the street: very significant substance use, very significant mental health problems. It doesn't mean we push everybody in inpatient treatment. We know that the best practice is usually the least restrictive, but we know there are plenty of folks who do need that inpatient treatment. They need very serious kind of institutional treatment, and we should have that available.
Well, thank you. I did not understand that role of the federal government by not compensating for treatment facilities with more than 16 beds. Seems kind of ludicrous, but we've seen these kinds of things happen before.
Yeah, I mean, it came up in the 60s when, you remember the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One of my favorite movies.
Right, I mean, really, actually, great work. Yeah, Nicholson was wonderful. But, the sentiment was, and quite accurately, that the large mental health hospitals had very serious abuses, and people were not treated well. And so, we've learned lessons. It doesn't mean you get rid of the large mental health hospital. It means you reform the system to enable adequate and appropriate treatment.
Good. Let's move on to your role in coming up in Congress, we'll say. You've got some credentials for fiscal management. And, we just mentioned earlier, this federal debt is a concern to everybody. It's so out of control.
Yeah.
Seems that neither party can get their hands around it. One wants to shut down the government. One wants to spend without limits. And there's got to be a way to kind of bring these two together. And I just thought I'd ask you, given the challenges you had running a city with, very competing interests and political overtones to it, do you have a sense of how you might approach this as a congressman?
Yeah, this is a massive challenge, and this is, a huge source of generational inequity. What we're doing to our children and grandchildren is horrible. $34 trillion later, and it is constraining mightily our ability to focus dollars where we need to focus them for many years to come to address our biggest challenges. In the book, I try to do what I can to propose changes. And I say the book, this is online.
What's the name of the book?
It's samliccardo.com. The name of the book is Let's Get It Done.
Okay.
Let's get it done. And the idea is on these key core issues, homelessness, crime, the high cost of living that everyone's grappling with, what are ways that the Congress can make the federal government a better partner with local communities struggling with these challenges? Because we know it's not just us, it's many urban communities throughout the country. And I try to put forward ideas that, with a couple of exceptions, don't cost much money or cost nothing at all. In some cases, they even save money. For example, we're all paying more in the grocery aisles for corn because of large subsidies for corn-based ethanol. Those are subsidies that cost taxpayers, and they also cost us as consumers. That's $700 million a year that we don't need to be spending, particularly given that ethanol is not, I think, given what we've learned about climate change, we recognize this is not our future. We have better approaches. So cutting some of these agricultural subsidies that are not helping us, it would be a good first start. In places like, pharmaceutical costs, drug costs, we see enormous cost escalations, in part because of the role of middlemen, pharmacy benefit managers. The three of the largest ones are actually all in the top 10 of the Fortune 500. And they are making enormous returns, in part because pricing isn't transparent and there's not enough competition in that space. And by requiring more transparent pricing, Congress could dramatically reduce those costs and save Medicaid and Medicare. One estimate from USC said that if we were buying generics, 180 generics from Costco instead of through the PBMs, we'd be saving taxpayers $2.6 billion. Those are the kinds of things that we can do and save money and benefit consumers in the end.
What you're saying then, again, I'm not informed, but the federal government, Medicare, allows the expensive brand label to be prescribed?
Well, in part, it's because the PBMs sometimes are steering folks toward that higher cost item. More frequently, the cost is greater because of what they call spread pricing. The price that's being charged by the manufacturer is quite a bit lower than the price that's being ultimately delivered to the insurer or the medical care provider, and that spread is a lot of profit for PBMs. So we need more competition and we need more transparency.
This is your first time in a congressional election. Are you finding it terribly different than running a local election? Because it's, you've been, the person in San Jose, the largest part of the South Bay here, same constituency more or less, or do you have a different constituency?
It is different. I mean, I represented a city of 1 million people in San Jose, very diverse, and, a significant amount of poverty in my city, despite the fact that we live in this valley of plenty. The district is demographically quite different and quite a bit more affluent than the city I represented. Although 42% of the residents in the district are from San Jose, so there's a lot of overlap, but obviously extends all the way up through into San Mateo County, includes communities like Atherton and Menlo Park and other communities are, obviously doing pretty well. And so they have different challenges, different issues, and that presents challenges for me to, I need to learn, I need to listen, I need to sit down and really try to understand before I come out with whatever I think is the magic solution. So I'm trying to put my ears to work.
Well, maybe we can help you here. So
Yeah.
This goes all through the peninsula here, Palo Alto, mid-peninsula. It's broadcast up through Menlo Park, and maybe this will give you a chance to reach those people in easy, quick ways. So you're raising quite a bit of money. You're the number one fundraiser to date.
Yeah.
Does that give you an advantage at this point, or is everybody in the same, are there people second, third, and fourth down the line that are kind of competitive with you?
Well, I think there are many formidable candidates in this race. So, money is just one small part of this effort, but obviously we need to communicate with a lot of folks. And I wrote a book. I spent 3 weeks writing this book, and now we have to go pay for the mail to get it delivered to everybody. If you don't get it delivered, nobody knows you wrote a book. So those are the kinds of things we're spending money on.
Are you delivering to everybody the book?
Not every voter, but I'll be knocking on doors delivering it to folks. In fact, I'm going out door knocking today here in Mountain View.
Wait, you're going to go on the street, knock on doors, and give away your book?
Actually, the book is only online right now. We'll have it out in a few days, but I'm giving them, information like I'll provide them the Chronicle endorsed me, so the San Francisco Chronicle, so I provide them with that. And then, the more important thing is me asking them, what do they care about? What are you concerned about? What's Congress doing or not doing for
Any
you?
good insights that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I mean, you only learn about a place, you know the most about it after you've spent many, many hours knocking on doors, because you start to get a sense of just the wide variety of concerns people have. But what is interesting is so many people are giving me responses that are aligned within those large three buckets. The high cost of living, people are struggling with, right? The homelessness, both the concern for the suffering that's happening on the street, but also all the impacts. And then crime. There's a very large percentage of folks in the community that I'm routinely hearing from who are telling me about these problems. And I ask them, well, if anything Congress is doing about them? And the answer is no. So,
yeah, communications with Congress from our district have been a little weak, I think.
Well, I think we've had a very good representative. Anna Eshoo's done an excellent job. And so I'm not blaming her. I think this is a larger institutional problem, right? And we got 535 members between the two houses. And a lot of them are listening to a lot of folks who, may be important for funding their campaigns, but not as important when it comes to actually solving problems.
I've heard this from several people. They go, this is Congress people, my colleagues are pretty reasonable until you get a camera in front of them. Then they're screaming from the top of the rafters about how terrible the other party is. Both sides do this.
Oh, yeah.
And he said the most disruptive thing you can do in a congressional committee meeting, bring a camera in. Oh, my God. Everything changes.
It's true. And look, I saw that at San Jose City Hall, too.
Did you?
Yeah. I mean, it's, the media has a way of making everybody magnify their personalities in some ways. And it can be entertaining, but usually it's pretty unproductive. Look, I think everyone's tired of the yelling. People want members of Congress who will reach across the aisle and try to get things done. And the good news is, as much as I disagree with the screamers on the other side, I'm a Democrat, and Lord knows we have yellers on both sides, but I may disagree with them. There are a lot of folks who aren't doing the screaming. And those are the people we need to sit down with.
They're never on the news. They're never in television.
They're not, but they're voting.
I agree.
They're voting, and that's what's important. And so, there's a problem solver caucus in the House of Representatives, and to join the problem solver caucus, you have to go bring somebody from the other party with you into the meeting. And you're not allowed to talk about whatever your party leadership is telling you. You can only focus on solutions. This is what we need to grow in Congress. We need a problem solver caucus that expands and gets more vocal, so that we have the same kind of advocacy for problem solving as we might have at the extremes.
It's great. These are all great comments. I want to do two things. I want to thank you for coming to the show, but I want to ask you if you'd like to give a message to your voters.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity, Jim. And this has been wonderful. In my final year in office in San Jose, because of innovative approaches we brought to homelessness, we reduced street homelessness by 11%, while it was increasing rapidly everywhere else that year in 2022. We left San Jose with the lowest homicide rate of any major city in the country, and I delivered a $30 million surplus to my successor. That's the kind of accountability people expect out of mayors. We need to bring that accountability to Congress, and that's why I'm running.
Well, Sam, you've been delightful. I really enjoyed meeting you, and I enjoyed your conversation and your willingness to come and be on our show here. And I do want to wish you every success going forward.
Thanks, Jim. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for joining us in this episode. If you gained insights from this conversation, share this show with your network, and frankly, ask them to subscribe. You can view all shows at our website, GameChangers.tv, as well as the podcast at Game Changers Silicon Valley. We look forward to your continued interest in upcoming shows.